All right, strap in and welcome to your NEWSMAX Daily for Tuesday, December the 10th, 2024. A super busy news day for the second of 5 Tuesdays this month. Christmas Eve is 2 weeks from today, the 5th and final Tuesday of the month. 21 days from now will be New Year's Eve. Today is Human Rights Day, a day to promote the rights of all people, regardless of their race, their religion, their nationality, or gender. The history of human rights dates to the United Nations adoption of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights on December the 10th, 1948. Today is also International Animal Rights Day, purposely established to coincide with Human Rights Day as a day to protect all animals. Topping the headlines this Tuesday, there are really 2 or 3 major ones, but we'll start with the acquittal of former Marine Daniel Penny in the New York City subway chokehold case and reaction to it. The arrest of a suspect in the murder of United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson by Pennsylvania police. And what a story this is turning into. And there are 2 wars still raging on, right? And the situation in Syria remains fluid as Israeli troops move into Damascus. And believe it or not, President Biden is giving a speech at the Brookings Institute today on
Bidenomics is about building an economy from the middle out and the bottom up.
Yeah, still talking Bidenomics. Tonight he'll speak at the White House Christmas dinner celebrating unity and the Special Olympics. President-elect Donald Trump announced several more appointments, including his attorney, Alina Habba, as special counselor to the president. She spoke about it with Rob Schmitt.
Alina Habba was just named counselor to the president in the incoming Trump administration, and she joins us now to talk about that. Alina, good to see you again. I heard Trump doesn't like being surrounded by a lot of smart women. You just got a new job. Tell us exactly what you're going to be doing.
Loaded question. I'm so excited. I effectively get to do a lot of what I've done, which is to help the American people, to be there for President Trump, and to help with issues like policy and the things that are near and dear to me and the president, which are America First policies and making sure we get this country on the right track. It's going to take all hands on deck, Rob, as you know, because we've got a lot to fix from the last administration. But it is truly the honor of a lifetime, and I'm so grateful and excited to work for the American people.
Yeah. You know a thing or two about Alvin Bragg. Alvin Bragg had a terrible day today, and I hope that it moves a lot of people toward this man needs to go, and we need to inspire New Yorkers to get rid of this. What we saw with Trump, what we've seen now. This is somebody that has a love for criminals, hates the good guy in most cases, and is just so corrupted. His mind is so corrupted.
Yes, it is. And, you know, with going in and being part of this administration, I can assure the American people that the one thing that I'm really passionate about is making sure that this does not happen again. Yeah. And I say that as firsthand knowledge as the person that was there with the president through so many witch hunts, through so much lawfare and political witch hunts, effectively. That's just what they are. And you can't do that and then let American people sit on the sidelines and get hurt. You can't. You just can't. You can't have this double standard. So it's something I'm really passionate about, and I'm going to be speaking to the president to see how I can help in that regard, especially because that is incredibly important. And it's something I know well, and I'm happy to help America make sure that we recover from the damage that has been done by these DAs and AGs and make sure that they know that they cannot do this. They will not get away with it. It is incredibly hurtful to the American people and the people that voted them in. Yeah.
You know, I was just speaking with Doug Burns, who's a former federal prosecutor. He was talking about the idea that Pam Bondi, when she gets in, should look into these prosecutions of Trump, these at the state level. Take a look at these investigate these people that have done this to him. I mean, we know that there's obviously connections. We know that, and Trump talked about on Meet the Press, that I think the number 3 at the DOJ just leaves his position and comes to New York to work for, Letitia James. You know that there were big meetings between the team in Atlanta and Fulton County with the White House. All of this just stinks to high heaven. Do you think that's going to be, will that happen? Do you think that we're going to have a DOJ look into people like Alvin Bragg, Letitia James, Fani Willis?
I can assure you that I'll be encouraging that, because there is no place for this in our country. There's absolutely no place for any of that. And Pam is amazing. She will 100% be doing the right thing by Americans. Americans should not be afraid of their federal government. They should not be afraid of their Department of Justice or their FBI. And unfortunately, Americans are. We're not sure if we're being spied on. We're not sure if we're going to be politically attacked and prosecuted and persecuted. That's not America. No. So for me, that's top of mind. We all know that. It's been my life for the last 3.5 years with President Trump. And I'm so lucky that we did get through it. However, that does not mean that we don't have a job to do for the American people to protect them, to make sure this doesn't happen to them. Pam is a great person. She is going to be tough as nails, and she is just brilliant. I'm excited to see what she does and work with the Trump administration to make sure this just stops.
Sure.
Trump attorney Alina Habba on Rob Schmitt Tonight, who asked her a question that a lot of people all over the country are asking.
I know this is all being run out of Mar-a-Lago. What's it like down there? And, you know, like, I mean, I know that I hear from people that I know that are members that it's just like the people you see walking around is crazy. But how's the president doing, and what's it like down in Mar-a-Lago right now?
You know, it's funny because you say you haven't seen him, the president, you know, everybody was so used to seeing him do 3-4 rallies a day, sometimes more. So for him to act like a normal president-elect, and not even normal, look, he's the one meeting with foreign leaders. Joe Biden's not there. His wife is. You know, he's been traveling. He's been working. He's so focused on building a perfect cabinet, on building a perfect administration that will get the job done. He learned the first time what needs to be done. He's going to come in so strong this time. And there's no question about it. So yes, at Mar-a-Lago, it is quite the scene, I will say. Obviously, I've spent my share of time there the past month, and it's amazing. There's a lot of people that you wouldn't and should expect, but they are all of a sudden respecting the leader of the free world. They're coming to pay their respects. They're coming to say they're going to work with him. They're coming to work on policies already. And he said it when he was in his rallies, when he was running. He will fix this country and do more for this country before he is actually sworn into office on January 20th. And I can assure you, Rob, without giving away all that is going on, he's doing exactly what he said.
Alina Habba, the incoming counselor to the president. That's the position held by Kellyanne Conway in the first Trump administration. In that interview, Rob mentioned New York DA Alvin Bragg. At the end of yesterday's NEWSMAX Daily, I said that we would be hearing from constitutional law expert Professor Alan Dershowitz and Judge Napolitano on the Daniel Penny case as deliberations resumed in New York City yesterday morning. Alan Dershowitz, a lifelong New Yorker, an extremely accomplished attorney, and that's an understatement, is now calling for the removal of Alvin Bragg.
Sir, did you want to start off with just the immediate reaction to the not guilty verdict in the Daniel Penny case?
I have to admit I was a little surprised. Having hung on the higher count, I was not expecting that they would so quickly acquit on the lower count. It probably shows that there were only 1 or 2 people in the original high count that hung based on their desire to see a conviction. So I think it's a good thing. Now, I think the next step has to be the removal of Alvin Bragg from the role of district attorney. He is a disgrace to the office. The 2 cases he brought should never have been brought. The case against Donald Trump, which was made up out of whole cloth, which to my mind involves unethical, unprofessional conduct by Bragg, and also this case, which should never have been brought either. He brought it only because of the racial component to the case and because of pressures from Black Lives Matter and other groups on the outside, both white and black radicals who wanted these cases to be brought, wanted this case to be brought, and who are going to continue to complain, even though there were obviously black members of the jury who voted to acquit as well.
Professor, what do you make of how quickly they came back with this verdict? And also, too, there's the civil case that he's also facing, too, Daniel Penny. Does that, given that he's not guilty on the criminal case, what happens to the civil case as well?
It'll be thrown out. There's no case there. Civilly, the only thing that will happen is that Penny will get an enormous amount of discovery and will get much more information that we don't now have about the alleged victim in the case. So my prediction is it will be withdrawn. I don't think they'll go any further. I don't think they'll get any kind of a verdict. Now, you know, maybe the city will settle if they sue the city as well. If I were the lawyers for the alleged victim, I probably think I'd have a better shot of getting some money from the city, which was sympathetic, obviously, to the victim, than from a poor former Marine who probably doesn't have a lot of money. So I don't think the civil case is going anywhere. This is not O.J. Simpson, where the civil case won after the criminal case lost. There was no case here to bring it all, either civil or criminal.
Alan Dershowitz on Newsmax, and this is Newsmax judicial expert Judge Napolitano with Bianca De La Garza and more on the civil case to come against Daniel Penny.
How do you think they came to this conclusion, and why so quickly?
You know, I've taken hundreds of verdicts from juries, and I'm not always very good at predicting how they're going to do. I thought that there would probably be a quick guilty verdict, since there obviously were holdouts from the more serious manslaughter charge. Right. But the jury must have found that Daniel Penny obviously performed a positive good by neutralizing the young man and preventing him from harming everybody else, and that the manner in which he did this was not reckless, it was not careless, it was not reckless, it was not heedless of human life. The jury sent a message, if I may, to the people of the city of New York, which is, there's nothing wrong with defending yourself or defending your family or defending your colleagues or even defending strangers. Don't do it if you don't know what you're doing. This guy, Daniel Penny, was trained in doing it. He wasn't trained to kill, but he was trained, at least not in this environment, he was trained to immobilize somebody who's preventing a threat. You know, as for the protesters are going to be out there. They're going to be out there for a long time. There's a civil suit coming. The standard of proof in a civil suit is different in a criminal case. It's way up here. Proof beyond a reasonable doubt. In a civil case, it's a preponderance of the evidence. So picture criminal, 99% of proof. Picture civil, 51% of proof. We'll probably go through this again if there is a trial, if there is an insurance carrier. If it's just Daniel Penny, I can't imagine that he has the assets necessary to pay a substantial verdict.
So he's 26 years old. He's a former Marine veteran. He would have faced 4 years in prison for this second charge, Judge, criminally negligent homicide. The manslaughter was heavier. It was up to 15 years for that. Right. Today, we're hearing reports that there was applause in the courtroom when this not guilty verdict was read. But Alvin Bragg, should this case have even ever been brought, in your opinion?
Well, I mean, that's a decision that Alvin Bragg was elected and hired to make. He doesn't always make decisions that seem to be the right thing to do. I thought the prosecution of former President Trump was extremely ill-advised. The judge didn't dismiss it. I thought that charging Mr. Penny with manslaughter was extremely ill-advised. The judge didn't dismiss it. This is what happens when you have a system where judges and prosecutors are popularly elected and their eye is on the ball of getting reelected, pleasing the crowd, rather than having their eye on the ball of doing the right thing under the law and under common morality. I don't know what's going to happen to Alvin Bragg. I think he's up for re-election in another 2 years. He's a Democrat. He has a strong Democratic base in Manhattan. He'll probably get re-elected if he wants the job.
Newsmax senior judicial analyst Judge Andrew Napolitano on with Bianca De La Garza. Let's switch gears a bit. In Syria, rebel forces are now in charge after ousting the country's longtime dictator. This is former Deputy National Security Advisor K.T. McFarland on Wake Up America with Charlotte McBride and John Glasgow.
Better than anyone. This is a very big deal. The Assad family ruling Syria for more than 50 years, the Syrian army abandoning its positions. President Bashar al-Assad has fled to Moscow. What do you make of the events unfolding now in Syria, and what happens next?
All right, it's an enormous opportunity for peace in the Middle East, but it's also a great danger for more war in the Middle East, and here's why. You know, the Assad family has ruled that country for over 50 years. I was working for Henry Kissinger in 1973 and 74 when he had shuttle diplomacy after the October Arab-Israeli war. And the hardest country to deal with wasn't Israel, it wasn't Jordan, it wasn't the Saudis, it wasn't Egypt, it was Syria. And that was Haifa al-Assad, the father of Bashar al-Assad. So that's going to be the complicated one. The other countries in the region are kind of falling into place in peace in the Middle East, but not Syria. So who are these rebels? We don't know. I mean, the major group is backed by Turkey, on the NATO ally Turkey. But on the other hand, there are a lot of other groups who are sworn, at least previously, incarnations of ISIS and Al-Qaeda. So which group takes over ultimately? Maybe they fight amongst themselves for a couple of years, couple of months. Maybe, a radical Islamic type state wants to be established and those guys win out. Maybe on the other hand, the good guys win out and the people that we might be able to deal with. But the big takeaway of all of this is Iran. And the situation Iran finds itself in. The mullahs have to be looking around and saying, Hezbollah, Israel got them. Hamas, Israel got them. Where are we? Well, look at Syria. That's a country that's been governed since the same time the mullahs came into power by one family. What happens if our own citizenry just rises up against us? Because remember, there was no resistance. Once the rebels went in, Assad's army just collapsed. The Syrian people, they seem to be in favor of this. So the mullahs have to be very, very worried, and rightfully so.
Yeah. What's the biggest concern here, KT, about this rebellion group? Is it the fact that they do have the ties to al-Qaeda, or is it they might set up some sort of government that might be worse than the regime that was already there?
Or chaos. The one thing we learned in the Arab Spring was that there's something worse than oppressive dictators, and that's total chaos. So, you could have a situation where there are lots of little different groups of radical extremists trying to spread their message, not only throughout the Middle East, but throughout the world. The difference this time around, I think, is President Trump. He's shown he's a deal guy. He's shown with the Abraham Accords between Israel and the Sunni Arab states, the rich petro states, that made a deal. And that deal didn't collapse once the October 7th attacks happened. It stayed. The Saudis will probably soon join. And then you've got an Iran that's isolated. Again, the key of the Middle East right now is always going to be Iran. And President Trump had Iran right where he wanted him at the end of President Trump's first term. Iran was broke because of the Trump sanctions. The Iranians couldn't sell their oil. And because of the low oil prices, thanks to Trump's energy policy, even what they could sell wasn't worth much. So they were on the ropes. They had to worry more about their own people than they did about spreading revolution. We could be in a situation like that. And what better president to do yet another peace deal in the Middle East than Donald Trump?
Former Deputy National Security Advisor KT McFarland on Wake Up America. Turns out that former Hawaii Congresswoman Tulsi Gabbard, Donald Trump's pick for National Intelligence Director, took a trip to Syria back in 2017 and met with then President Bashar al-Assad, the one that was just ousted. Now with Syria front and center, Gabbard was getting some heat on Capitol Hill yesterday by some senators seeing her meeting as legitimizing Assad. And Gabbard saying simply how important it is to open dialogue. Sort of like, I'm not really comparing it, but sort of like when Trump met with Kim Jong-un in the DMZ, right?
I'm looking forward to continuing to engage with the senators on the committee and also in the broader Senate as we go through this process.
Meanwhile, Pete Hegseth was back on Capitol Hill yesterday and met with his most outspoken critic, his most outspoken Republican critic, Senator Joni Ernst of Iowa, who simply said she's looking forward to the confirmation hearing.
I am supporting the process.
Last night's edition of Chris Plante and The Right Squad has more on the fight for and against Pete Hegseth.
Pete Hegseth, you probably know Pete, and Hegseth has been the subject of a number of smear pieces, largely by anonymous people making outrageous allegations, since President Trump announced that he was his choice to become Secretary of Defense. But Pete Hegseth has remained committed to the fight. President Trump has remained committed to the fight. And Hegseth, even tweeting after Trump's Meet the Press interview, he wrote, "President Trump never flinched. Neither will I." So that's pretty good and gutsy by Pete Hegseth, and good for President Trump to stand by him, because it essentially doesn't matter who he announces. The pack of bloodthirsty jackals seek to slake their thirst on whoever that is.
I mean, and Pete Hegseth, he does put a lot of the industry at risk. You have a lot of career bureaucrats and suits in there who are totally useless, that want to preserve their own skins. And look, if you look at the anatomy of the last few weeks, this is a hit job. It is a smear, and we know this because the goalposts have continually shifted, right? It started with he raped a blackout drunk woman in cold blood. We all read the police report, and it turns out it's kind of exculpatory for him because his story is corroborated by this unnamed woman's husband. Then it moves to he was harassing his fellow staff. Everyone at Fox comes out and points out what we all know, which is that Pete Hegseth is a very nice, lovely person to work with. Then it goes to he drinks too much. No, he doesn't. And now we're going to attacking his Christianity. He has lots of kids. If this were actually about a real Me Too issue, we would have had other accusers. If this were actually about the principled standing of it all, it wouldn't be the same 5-alarm fire for every single one of Trump's nominees, which it is.
Well, if we started having principled arguments in Washington, that would ruin the project, I think. That, this weekend, this left-wing outlet again, Politico, they ran a 3,600-word hit piece on Pete Hegseth on his Christianity, on his faith, I kid you not, claiming that he's on a crusade, like the Crusades of 1,000 years ago, to turn the U.S. military into a Christian weapon. This is the piece in the Politico. The article likened his Christianity to the Taliban, but they would defend the Taliban on the next page, quoting one so-called scholar. They always have scholars that they like to quote, and they're usually not very scholarly, saying, the last thing we need is a Christian ISIS. Yeah, because that's what we're talking about here. The author of this drivel, who should probably be sued, also writing, it's the people who look, talk, and pray like Hegseth who are most receptive to his tirades against the military's elevation of women into combat roles, right? And they wrote, Hegseth's belligerent anti-government views, wrapped in religious crusade rhetoric, also threaten to worsen a problem of extremism in the military.
Chris Plante and The Right Squad, 10 o'clock Eastern. Check it out tonight. And again, that was all published by Politico. Another Democratic lawmaker has jumped ship. Florida State Rep Susan Valdez of Tampa yesterday switched her party registration from Democrat to Republican, and in a statement on X, she wrote that I will not waste my final 2 years in the Florida legislature being ignored in a caucus whose leadership expects me to ignore the needs of my community. Again, that is Florida State Rep Susan Valdez of Tampa, a Democrat, officially becoming a Republican. And House Republicans selected Florida Congressman Brian Mast, a combat war veteran, to chair the House Foreign Affairs Committee in the upcoming 119th Congress. A fantastic selection. And I know sometimes you think I talk a lot about Florida. I'm just a homer for my state. If you didn't know, I live in Florida, but I can't help it that the president-elect and his entire family lives in Florida, and that he's choosing so many people from Florida to join his team. I'm just giving you the news. A lot of it just happens to come from the great state of Florida. How about the great state of Texas? Republicans also selected Representative Brian Babin of Texas to lead the House Committee on Science, Space, and Technology. After closing in the red yesterday, the stock markets opened mixed this morning. The Nasdaq and the S&P slightly higher. The Dow Jones Industrial Average was down about 80 points. If you own any chip stocks, you may have been wondering what the heck happened yesterday. Well, Chinese regulators apparently opened an investigation into U.S. chip maker NVIDIA, citing China's anti-monopoly laws. Canadian President Justin Trudeau also now says if Trump follows through with tariffs, Canada will impose tariffs as well. And in response, Trump putting out a pretty funny comment on his Truth Social about Trudeau being the governor of the state of Canada. I actually retweeted that a little bit earlier this morning. If you're not following me on Twitter, you should be at radio_Marino. And yesterday I told you about Judy Garland's red slippers being auctioned off for $28 million. Today, Sotheby's, the famous auction house, Sotheby's, they're putting up former NFL quarterback Tom Brady's high-end, fancy, rare watches and sports memorabilia collection. Again, that's from Tom Brady. You can keep up with all of the news and breaking developments on Newsmax, N2, and Newsmax.com. Beginning each and every day with Wake Up America, National Report, Bianca De La Garza, American Agenda, Rob Schmitt Tonight, Finnerty, Greg Kelly Reports, The Right Squad, and much, much more. Make sure you're streaming on Newsmax Plus so you can watch your favorite shows anywhere, anytime. Go to NewsmaxPlus.com for more information. I'm Tony Marino. Thank you, as always, for listening to the Newsmax Daily. I do truly appreciate that. Continue to share it with your friends, family, on social media, anybody else, so we continue to grow the community and keep on fighting the good fight. And that reminds me to thank South Carolina Congresswoman Nancy Mace for listening. Enjoy the rest of your day.
News breaks every minute, every day. You need the app, the Newsmax app. Find it free on your smartphone store. Then watch us anytime, anywhere.
Relentlessly slowing the spread of the stupid every day. It's the Rob Carson Show.
Hey, it's Rob Carson. My podcast is about leading-edge commentary and opinion, great guests, and the biggest political comedy in the country. My satire was featured on the Rush Limbaugh program for over a decade, and now it's fresh and new and on my podcast. It's not just another desk-pounding conservative tirade. It's about entertaining, informing, and motivating. Patriotism and hope. You don't need more stress in your life. You need to feel good and, dare I say, even laugh. Subscribe and download at your favorite podcast platform or go to Newsmax.com/listen.
Information. Truth is freedom. Is Newsmax. It's real news for